Yeah.
Yeah. Can you make sure that
Yeah. All right, so we're going to get started on doing our elevations. So just regarding the layers, we're going to add a couple layers. So these are the layers, the ones in white are the layers you already have set up, and we're going to be adding a couple new layers that we're going to need for our elevations. So the elevations are going to be done using detail lines. So we're going to be adding a detail T line, or very thin detail lines, and detail GRAD for grade lines. So that's going to be a very thick grade line. We're going to be using color number 11, which is salmon, for the very, very thick line, and we'll edit the CTV file, and I'll show you how to do that right away. And then for the very thin detail lines, we're going to be using color number 5, which doesn't require any edits for the CTV file. As long as you're using that Arch 253 CTV, you should be fine. So if you want to update the CTV file for color number 11, we want it to be a really thick line. I'm thinking 2 millimeters thick. So I'm going to go into, click on any one of my pages where I've used that CTV file, so A1 or A2, and I'm going to go to Page Setup Manager. I'm going to click on Modify. And once this pops up here, I want to make sure that you have, you guys will have the Arch 253.ctv. I called mine Arch Default. It's the same CTV file. I just changed the name of it for you guys so that it's more specific for your for this class. So what you're going to do is you're going to click on Edit for the Plot Style Table Editor. And after you click on Edit, you'll get the Edit window pop up here. There we go. Oh, there we are. And so we added color number 11, or we added that detail, or that grade line, as color number 11. So color number 11 right now doesn't have a line weight. So you notice that all the other colors do. If you click down all these colors, you'll notice that they all have specific line weights, right up to color number 9. Color number 10 doesn't have any line weights, but color number 11 also doesn't have any line weights. If you notice, those line weights are the items that change. So we can just quickly scan through. Just keep an eye out on the line weight there. As I scroll through, you can see the changes in the line weights. The idea is that anything that's closer to the opposite of black should be a darker color. Or sorry, a thicker line. Anything that's closer to the color of black should be a thinner line. That's the idea behind the CTV files, but that's all created for you. That's just how I set up my CTV files. So what you see, when the contrast that you see in black model space is essentially the more contrast, the thicker the lines, the less contrast, the thinner the lines. That's the way I set mine up. Everyone has a little bit different philosophy, and whatever you choose, as long as you know what those colors mean. So color number 11, I'm just arbitrarily choosing that. We're only going to use it in one location. That's just for the grades. So it really doesn't matter whether we pick something that's contrasting with black or not. I'm just going to use color number 11. Now for the object line weight, I'm going to set that to 2 millimeters. So that means when I actually print my drawing, that line, even though it's showing as a very thin line on my screen, will print 2 millimeters thick on paper. And that's a very thick line. We may adjust that later, but we'll leave that for now. So we're going to change color number 11 to line weight of 2 millimeters. Make sure that your color is still black. We want all the lines to be black, no matter what color they are in model space. We do not want any color showing up on our printed copies. So press Save and Close, press OK. Now that you've made a change to that CTV file, you don't need to change it in every layout. It'll already be updated in every layout. If you want to see, I'll go to page A2, and we can prove it. This is the same CTV file. Go to color number 11. There's those 2 millimeters. We don't need to change it in both locations. Only once. You only have to change it in one location. All right. So once you have those layers set up, and I'll just double check to make sure I have those layers. There I got my grade, color number 11, and I've got my thin line, color number blue. Also make sure that those layers are set to plot. Okay, make sure a lot of students, I've noticed, have if you take a look down your plot column, this means that it will not plot, but if it doesn't have that little red on it, then it will plot. So just double check to make sure that you haven't got a layer set not to plot, otherwise that will end up confusing you down the road. Alright, so the idea of what we want to do here is we really want to actually use the layouts that we already have, the floor plan layouts. We want to use them as a guideline for creating our elevations. So if I wanted to create the front elevation at the foundation level, I'm going to be using this as my guide for the openings, for what to cut out. When I go to the garage plan, I'm going to be using this elevation, because this is the front. I'm going to be using these lines as a guide to what I want to show on the garage level. And then when we get to the main floor plan level, I'm going to be using the front elevation here as a guide what to put on there. So we want to start off first of all by working kind of from the bottom up. So I'm going to start from the foundation level and work my way up, which means that I'm going to draw some horizontal lines which represent my foundation level, and I'm going to get started drawing on those. So I'm going to use the X line, but I'm going to choose a layer that's the no plot layer. So right now this is ANO no plot, and that just means that I can leave those lines in as guidelines to make sure everything's lined up, but they will not print on the final drawing. So I'm using the no plot layer, ANO no plot. And if you noticed in my layer setup, ANO no plot is set not to plot. So no matter what, it will not plot. Doesn't matter where I use it. And so I'm just going to create an X line, and I'm going to create a horizontal X line. Now I've already kind of got some locations set up here. I'm just going to use those, but I'll help you get these set up here as well. That'll be one of the things that we do. The other thing I want to do is I'm just going to change the layer style, just so that it's a little bit easier for me to see. So maybe I'll choose a dashed. It really doesn't matter. I might even choose a dot line. Let's try phantom. One of these phantom lines. Yeah, just something like that. Just so I know that it's just sort of a guideline for myself. And I'm going to make copies of that in several locations. But before we do that, we need to create these elevation markers. Now these are going to be permanent. These are going to be included in our drawings. We're going to be putting them in. So I'll show you how we create these. So I've got this created as a block, and I'll just recreate it for you guys for the purposes of you guys for doing this. So the layer that we've got this on is the A floor level layer. Okay, so this designates the levels of our different floors, or the different layers of our elevations. So I'm going to create a circle using that layer. Right? I'm going to create a circle that has a diameter of 12 inches. Okay, I won't make the mistake like I did on the foundation plan of making saying I wanted a 12-inch diameter and actually doing a 24. So that's a 12-inch diameter circle. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create some lines. And oops, I used the wrong layer there. Should have been, come on, there we go. And this is going to be, yeah, by layer, okay. Alright, so, that's weird. Wait a second here. Let me just check something here. Alright, so what I did there is I just changed the floor level line type style. Here I changed it to continuous for now. So we'll actually manually change the lines that come out of that to phantom. They should be phantom, but we don't want the actual symbol to be in a phantom line style. Now I'm just going to draw a line from one quadrant to the other. Again, using the same layer. It'll help if I update my layer. There we go. And now I'm going to actually hatch that. I'm going to use a solid color hatch. So once the hatch comes up here, I'm going to be using hatch pattern is going to be solid. And I'll just click in the two quadrants there. And now I'm going to draw a line. Actually, I'm going to extend this existing line. I'm just going to extend it out an arbitrary amount. Doesn't really matter. I'm also going to extend it out the back 2 inches. And then I'm going to take these lines and extend them 2 inches top and 2 inches bottom. So really the elevation datums, that's what this is, should have a little bit of an extension on it. So 2 inches on all three sides, and then this last side will kind of extend out a little bit further. Now at this point I'm actually going to create a block. The reason I'm doing it at this point before I put my text in is because I want to create that text as an attribute. So I'm going to create a block of this right now. So I'm going to create block, and let's call this block elevation level or something like that. Okay, the base point, I'm going to choose just the center of that circle. Make sure it's on convert to block. Make sure that I'm allowing exploding later. And I'll press OK. Now I'm going to actually edit that block. So I'm going to go to block editor. And I'm going to add in some attributes. If I can find there we are, attribute definition. And so the tag here, so this is going to be the name. This is the name of the elevation. So, and then we'll put in elevation name. And the default, I'm just going to put top of. Because usually we're going to be identifying it as the top of footing, top of wall, top of main floor. So top of is going to be the default, and that'll just save me from having to type a whole bunch when I go to change it. The justification, I'm going to use bottom left, and I'm going to use a 3.5mm text style. So just a little bit bigger than the regular text style, but not quite as big as the title text. That might be a little bit overkill. And then I'm going to select this point here as the bottom left point. So that intersection of the circle and the line is going to be the bottom left point. My layer here, I want to change this layer. It's going to be the same layer, A floor level. Everything's going to be on that floor level layer. I'll make that the current layer. I'm also going to now add in another attribute. Oops. Over here. Under the under the Insert tab, find attributes. Okay, we're still in the block, and now this one's going to be the elevation number. So this is going to be a value that's going to represent the height of the level. So, you know, the top of footing, which is going to be the very lowest amount, that we'll do 0 foot 0. And then as we go up from there, it's going to be a certain increment from 0 foot 0, a certain distance. So the default is going to put 0.00, or in this case 0 foot 0 inches. And justification is going to be top left. And I'm going to use 2.5mm, so slightly smaller text size here. And I'll select that as the connection. Now I don't want it touching the line, so I'm actually just going to move it down about 1 inch. Just so it's not actually touching the line. And I might actually indent it a little bit, and I'm just going to indent it about 5 inches. So kind of create this little, well, that's what it should look like. So this will, the name of the elevation is going to be on the top, and we'll have the distance of the elevation on the bottom. All right, so I'm going to click Close Block Editor, save the changes. And now when I double click on it, whoops, when I, first of all I have to manage attributes, and I have to synchronize it. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to go down to elevation level. Just going to click on sync for both of these. And you'll notice that it added in the defaults when I clicked on sync. Press OK, and now I should be able to double click on it and have those attributes editable. So the first one is going to be top of footing, and the height of the level is going to be 0 foot 0. So that'll be the first one. So I just recreated that one right there. Top of footing, we should probably actually put in here ELEV : 0 foot 0. Just so we know that that's the elevation of that particular top of footing. Alright, so you're going to take these and you're going to snap them or move them onto the line, the horizontal line that you created. It really doesn't matter where you put it, we'll adjust them later. So I've got mine over here. And the next ones that we want to do are we want to do the top of the foundation wall, the top of the main floor, and the top of the main floor walls. So for the sake of time, I've already created these levels. Now I'm just going to basically copy my X line, and I'll copy it from the, let's do the center point. Actually, I'll copy it from the end point here. There's my end point. Right here. Because it's an X line, it doesn't really matter where you copy it from. So, like I said, we want to do top of foundation wall. Now the distances here, I'll throw some dimensions on so you can see the distances. The distances from one to the other. Here we have 5 feet. So the top of the footing is going to have a 5-foot foundation wall on top of it. So this is the top of the foundation wall. That represents the very top of that foundation wall. The next one that we're going to have, and I'll just do a dim continue here. Next one we're going to have is the top of the top of the main floor. So what we have here is we actually have 8-foot high walls. So let me copy this here. We have 8'1" is going to be the height of the garage wall. So the garage walls will go from the top of the foundation wall to the underside of the floor joists for the main floor, and that's 8'1". So let me just adjust that real quick here. That's 8'1", and we have 12 inches for the thickness of the joists on the main floor. Or 1 foot even. So that brings us now to 9'1", in addition to our already have 5 feet, so that's a total of 14'1". So you're just going to double click and you're going to edit all of the attributes accordingly. So top of main floor, elevation 14'1". Top of foundation wall, elevation 5'0". So we're going from 0. So top of footing elevation, that is 0. We're going up from there. The next thing we're going to do is top of main floor walls. So we'll connect from here to here. And this is 9-foot one, so we have 9-foot main floor walls. And what we'll eventually need to add in, but we don't have it yet, we'll eventually add in the top of the peak of the roof. So let me just make a copy just so we remind ourselves, and I'll edit it, but we won't know the actual elevation yet. So this is top of roof. And we don't know what the elevation is, so I'm just going to put question marks in for now. We have to figure that out first before we get to that point. So we'll just kind of set that up so I remind myself to do it later. Now I have all my different levels set up. I can actually get started with drawing the objects on the elevation. So like I said, I'm going to start from the bottom up. Let's do the foundation wall first. So the layer that I'm going to choose for that is I'm going to start with all normal detail lines. Everything I draw is going to be using normal detail lines for now, and then I'll manually modify them or add in other detail lines later. Okay, so once we get into the fine detail, we'll start using some thinner lines, but for now everything's going to be normal. So I'm going to change my layer to A detail normal, or A detail, this one here. Now I like to draw using rectangles. Instead of drawing a series of lines, I use rectangles. It makes it easier to edit later and creates the whole thing as a polyline. So I'm going to use a rectangle. I'm going to draw a line from this bottom corner to this top corner here. Now, sorry, one thing I forgot here actually, is that we've dropped down some lines, some horizontal or some vertical X lines. Let me just draw that in here. X line, we're going to use vertical. And what I've done is I've just actually connected them to the corners of the elevation in the floor plan above. So this foundation plan, I've got those two lines shown there. I'm going to do the same thing for these here. So this is my garage plan. And here's my main floor plan. I'm just going to drop some lines down. Those should also be the no plot layers. So I got them as detail lines because I forgot to do it earlier. But these should actually be done using no plot. And if you want to change the line type to a phantom, that's fine too. Maybe I will do that just to keep it all consistent. But it doesn't really matter. They're going to come out later anyways. So these are just for the purposes of guiding us. They're guidelines. That's all they are. All right, so we've got our, our rectangle for our foundation plan. And that actually represents the line of our foundation. Now what we're missing, because this line here is the top of our footing, we're actually missing the bottom of the footing, or the silhouette of the outline of the footing. So I'm going to draw another rectangle, again using my detail line, and I'm going to draw it from this corner here. I'm actually going to draw, I'm going to use the from command here, because I actually want to draw it a little bit off of this corner. I'm going to use from base point, I'm going to go at -4, that represents the projection of our footings, comma -6, which represents the thickness of our footings. And then I'm going to actually just draw it to this other side here and manually adjust it over the projection, which would be 4 inches. So now you'll see that we have a little rectangle that looks like the footing. It has a projection of 4 inches. Just double check the projection there, make sure we got it right. Yeah, so we have a projection of 4 inches and a thickness of 6 inches. All right, so you can see that that's going to work. That'll be all right. Now, because we're just doing a silhouette in the basement, I'm actually not going to be showing these lines here. So I'm going to trim that out. I'm just going to click on my trim command, double-click trim. Whoops. Try that again. I'm just going to trim that out. So now I should have just a, if I look at it, I just have a polyline. Well, two polylines, really, that represent the outline of the foundation. We'll come back to that in a bit because some of that's going to get hidden and some of it will stay solid, but we're going to leave that for now. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do the main floor walls. We're just working on the massing for right now, so just the walls, just the massing. So again, I'm going to do my rectangle. I'm going to connect it from the bottom corner of my foundation wall to the top corner of where the walls would be. Now the thing about this is that we actually, for the main floor garage walls, remember they extend out or project out 1 inches on the sides. That represents the siding. So I'm going to, because I've created a rectangle, makes it quite easy. I'm going to grab onto that handle and I'm going to move this out 1 inch. I'm going to go the other side. I'm going to grab onto that handle and move it out 1 inch. Now that represents, if you notice there, we've now got an overhang of 1 inch from the foundation wall to the garage floor walls. And that's what we want. That's what we said that they actually will look like because of the siding. And I'm going to continue now and add in my floor level. Some of this detail may come out, but I'm just going to use an extension there. We'll add it in for now, and then I'm also going to do another rectangle, whoops, for the main floor walls. And I'll use the extension here. Come on. Alright, well, let's just do the intersection for now. It didn't do what I wanted it to do. Let me try that again. I suppose if I was smart, I'd actually move these, right? Let's move those an inch out. So our guidelines will now be moving 1 inch out. There we go. That makes it a bit easier. And we'll get to the roof in a minute here, but now if you take a look at what we have our foundation wall, we have our garage walls, we have the main floor, the floor joist for the main floor, and we have our main floor walls. That represents the massing of this particular plan. Now the only thing I want to add in at this point is I want to actually add in the grade line. So if you remember in our conversation about elevations, we talked about the grade actually being 8 inches below the top of the foundation wall. So I'm going to take this level for the top of the foundation wall and I'm going to copy it 8 inches down. That should represent my grade line now. So if I choose that layer, now we'll have created that layer, detailed grade line, I'm actually going to draw a line that goes from this point here across to this point here, and I'm just going to draw another line, take my ortho off, and I'm just going to draw it sort of on an angle on the way down, just to represent a little bit of slope on either side of the plan. Remember, we want our grade to slope away from the foundation, and it's just an arbitrary amount, but it just shows that there's an obvious slope away from our foundation. That's all. And we'll dimension that when we get to dimensions. We'll dimension the distance between the top of the foundation wall to grade. But now we have our massing pretty much ready to go. Now the other thing we can do here is we can actually break this foundation wall and change it to hidden lines. So I'm just going to use the break command. And I'm just going to break that polyline. I'll rejoin it up to the top. Everything underneath the grade line is going to be hidden. Everything above the grade line will be solid. So I'm going to change this, in the detail line, I'm going to change it to A detail hide. So that represents hidden line. Now you can see that we've actually got a hidden line. Represents the silhouette or the outline of our foundation below grade. And above grade we have solid lines, which represents the actual foundation. Now I'll show you how to do the roof now. We'll actually do the roof massing. So again, I'm going to be using the detail line. And we're going to focus on one corner first. We're going to do one side of the roof and then we're going to mirror it to the other side and then join the lines up later. Now this represents the top of our walls. So if I were to actually show you what it looked like underneath there, there would be a rectangle that would be 5.5 by 1.5. Whoops. Let's try that again. Okay, so this would be the top of the this would be the top cap, the cap plate, and then we'd have the top plate. Right, so that's what it would look like, and it would actually be positioned right up in the corner there. So that's kind of what it would look like, just to give you an idea of what the truss is going to be like. Now with this roof, what we're going to be using is a 6/12 pitch and a 6-inch heel with a 16-inch overhang. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make a copy. I'm going to draw a line for that's going to be 16 inches out. That's going to represent the line that I don't want to extend past in terms of the tail of my trusses. I'm going to draw another line that's going to be 6 inches up from here, and that's going to represent the heel. So that's the top of my heel. And I'll do another line I'm just going to draw it along in here, and I'm going to copy that line. That represents the bottom chord of my truss. Let me try that again. Hang on. Okay, why didn't it grab that line? Must not have worked. Okay, try it again. Draw another line, just an arbitrary length, doesn't really matter. That's the bottom chord of my truss. I'm going to copy that up 3.5 inches. Okay, didn't mean to copy that with it. Okay, that's the bottom chord of my truss. There's my heel. Now I'm going to draw a line from my heel that represents the slope. So we said we have a 6/12 slope. That means for every 12 inches horizontally, we go 6 inches vertically. So I'm going to make my line at 12,6. That represents the slope of the line. Now that heel should be intersecting from the outside wall to the top chord of my truss. So now I'm going to offset the top chord of my truss 3.5 inches down. Why did that work out so funny? Hang on. Maybe I did 3.5. There we go. 3.5 inches, and I'm going to extend. Use the trim command for extending. Hold down the shift and click. I'm going to extend this down to my 16-inch mark, or the mark that represents 16 inches away from the wall. So there's the top chord of my truss. There's the bottom chord of my truss. Now we're just worried about the massing for right now. But let me show you what this is going to look like in here. So we'll actually have a piece of lumber in here that represents our subfascia. And it would be in line with the the top chord of that truss. Let me just try and get that to move here. There we go. So that's going to be right in line like that. We're going to have sheathing on the top of the roof here as well. It's going to be 3/8 inch sheathing, so 0.375. I'm going to offset the top chord to represent that sheathing. And I'll just kind of clean it up a little bit here. So that's kind of what it's going to look like when everything's sort of finished. And then we're going to have our soffit, which is going to, there's a couple different ways to do it. We can have a flat box soffit, or we can actually follow the line of the underside, which in this case, that's what I'm going to do. And we'll use 3/8 inch soffit, so we're just going to offset that soffit a little bit like so. Now you don't have to do all this, but this is just to get our outline so we can see what the roof is going to look like in terms of its slope. Now once we have this prepared, we're actually going to copy that to the other side, or we're going to mirror it actually. We're going to take the whole assembly that we've created there, and we're just going to do a mirror, and we're going to use the center point as the mirror line. We do not want to erase the other objects. We want to keep those the same. And now if I use my chamfer command with a distance of 0, I can actually chamfer the roof sheathing to create the peak of the roof. Like so. So that's just the massing for our roof. Now I'm going to get rid of some other lines in here. We don't need the bottom truss. We don't need that. We don't need this one here. We don't need this. Really, we're just interested in the massing. So the overall outline of what it's going to look like for the elevation. We don't really even need this because the soffit is going to be like, we'll just kind of leave it like that for now, and we'll come back and fix it up later. Do the same thing on the other side. I probably should have done this before, but okay, so that sort of represents the massing, and we may end up fixing this up a little bit later. But now we know where the peak of our roof is. So what I'm going to do is make a copy of this X line. I'm going to position it at the peak of the roof, and now I'm going to position this. I'll move it down. So now we know our top of roof, and now we can actually get a dimension. So 5'9" 7/8". We're going to have to add that to 23'2". So, get our calculators out here. What do we have here? We're going to have, let's see, 9 and 7/8. It's going to be pretty close to 29 feet. 28 foot, 11 and 7/8. Let's just do 29 feet. We're an eighth of an inch off of 29 foot. Or, yeah, so that's not a big deal. So that's the overall elevation of our roof. Okay, now that's using 6-inch heel and 6/12 trusses. Keep that in mind. Should actually do camphor here. All right, so again, focusing just on the massing. Initially, you really just need to get started with your foundation plan. Now we're going to add in a little more details in terms of, openings, things like that. So keeping it on the foundation plan, we'll take a look now at the garage door. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of these X lines. Actually, I might even move them. You don't need them on the outsides anymore now that we have that located. And I'll just move them to the location where we need them to show the openings, the location of our openings. Oops. Try that again. So now that's where we need to cut our opening for our garage door. So I'll use the rectangle command. I'll start from grade, because that's actually where the garage door starts, is from grade. And we're going to make this, let's see if this works out, 16 feet, comma 7 feet. So 7 feet is the height of that door, 16 feet is the width. We come pretty close there. So I'm just going to drag it over to our construction line. 7 feet would represent the height. And so that would be our garage, the outline of our garage door. Let's do the same thing for the main floor plan. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually copy this plan. I'm going to move it, not copy, I'm going to move it. And I'm going to move it from one plan to the other. Now keep in mind that when we drew our main floor plans or our garage floor plans, we didn't offset 1 inch for the siding, which we've done in this plan here. So I'm going to actually be using this line here as the copy point, because I want everything to be lined up, or the move point. So we're just going to move it along so that it now sits underneath our main floor plan, or garage floor plan, sorry. And actually there's no difference between what we just drew and what we have. We need to actually go to the main floor plan, so we'll move it even a step further. Move. I'm using the foundation as the guide, or the base point, because that's how my lines are set up. You'll notice we have a 1 inch difference between the guide line and the outside walls. I'm going to create more X lines, which represents my openings, so we can actually show where the openings are going to be located on the front elevation. So I just changed the layer to that no plot layer. I'm going to choose a vertical X line, and I'm going to snap one here on either side of the opening. Like so. If I want, I can change that to phantom. It'll eventually get deleted anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So that's where my openings are going to be. Now we need to know what point to start those openings. We need to know what height are they aligned at. Anyone remember from their conversation the other day what height they should be aligned to? 7 feet, 84 inches. So I can actually make a copy of my X line from the main floor. I can go up 7 feet. That's going to represent the top of those windows. That should be where the frame is aligned to. So the layer that I choose is going to be, again, my detail layer. I'll do a rectangle. Now the size of these windows, I believe, are 20 or 30 by, was it 30 by 60? Yeah, so 30 by 60. So I'm going to choose a rectangle starting from the corner at 30, 60. Should have been 30, -60, and then I could have line. You can see it lines up quite nicely there, actually. Now I'm going to make a copy of that. And I'll copy from here to here to here. I can delete my guideline. I no longer need that. And we can see where the outlines of the windows there. And I also don't need these anymore. I can delete those. So you can see our elevations actually coming together quite nicely so far. Okay, so the front elevation is probably one of the easiest ones to do because all your drawings are oriented so that you can draw your front elevation quite easily. Just drawing everything that connects to the front, you can draw it below. When you get into the rear elevation and the left and right elevations, they're a little bit trickier because you actually have to draw the elements that are on the side. And you want to make sure everything is lined up. So a couple different ways you could do it. I mean, you could just manually do it. You could just manually look at, okay, I have a window, and here's the location of the windows. You know the dimensions, and you could just sort of manually fit them in. One of the ways I like to do it, though, just so that I don't forget anything, is I actually will make a block out of all of these plans, and I'm going to copy them to another location on my drawing, and just place them above, and then I'm going to drop the lines down for those particular elevations. So what we'll do is we'll do the let's do the foundation. I'm going to do the rear elevation next. So I'm actually going to create a block of my foundation plan. And it doesn't really matter where the base point is. It's just a temporary block. I mean, we'll eventually delete it anyways. And then I'm going to insert a copy of my foundation plan block, but I'm going to rotate it. So there's my foundation plan block. I'll insert a copy. Let me just place it, let's go nearest here. Just place it there for now. And because I'm doing my rear elevation, I'm just going to rotate this. 180 degrees. That'll give me the information that I need. Now, you might have thought, well, maybe I should just mirror it. You've got to be careful about that because you want to make sure that the location of your doors are on the correct side. Otherwise, you might get thrown off. You might actually throw the doors on the wrong side, right? So now this is just a block, so that's okay. That's all we need. I'll do the same thing with my main floor, or my garage plan, sorry. So I'll call this plan garage. Base point. Let's use that as a base point. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do 180 for the rotation. Yeah, it works. And I'll do the same thing for the upper, or the main floor plan as well. Okay, so now for my rear elevation, it's going to have almost the same massing as the front elevation, so I'm going to make a copy of it. Now don't move it, but actually make a copy. And we'll position it in a second here. We need to drop our lines down. Well, maybe we should do that first. Okay, let me do that. So let's make a copy of this. We're going to copy it from here to here. Try that again. And I'm just going to delete out all the specifics for the front elevation because this is going to be my rear elevation now. But the massing should be very much the same, so that rear elevation is going to look the same. The only difference is we have different openings at the foundation level and the main floor and the garage plan level. So I'm going to make a copy of my X lines at the openings. I think that's the only thing here. We'll have to do the stairs as well, but there's my my door opening there. And if I want to, I could do the same thing. Well, that should be, we'll come back to this one in a second. Now I'm going to create an opening using a rectangle, and that would go from the ground up. Now the size of this door is going to be 36 inches by 6'8" or 80 inches, so 36 by 80. And you'll notice that we make that opening just a little bit wider. We will do that. We'll actually maybe center this. Let me take a look at the distance here, because the lines that we drew there, so 3 inches. So let's move it over 1.5 inches. The lines that we dropped down are actually representing the buck. So they would typically have a piece of wood in there with some brick mold perhaps around the door frame. And so that's just going to give us a little bit of space for that. So we've got 1.5 inches space now for a piece of wood to go between the garage concrete and the actual frame of the door. That gives something for the frame to fasten into as well. So that's okay, nothing wrong with that. So we just moved it over 1.5 inches just to center it. And our columns, we could actually position our columns if we wanted to on those precast brackets. So let me move this. Let's position precast bracket here. Now we can show the precast bracket in elevation view below the grade. So there be my precast brackets. Let's make a copy of this one so that we can position this one as well. While we're at the foundation level, kind of makes sense. So that would be the location of the precast brackets. Now I'm just going to draw a precast bracket as a rectangle. And the rectangle is going to be 3 inches wide. And let's go, I don't know, 24 inches deep. I'm not sure exactly how deep those things would be, but I think that looks about right. And I'm going to move this so it's at the grade level and connect it to the center of that X line that I've copied down. I'm just going to make a, actually let's change the layer of that. That's going to be a hidden layer, so A detail hide, because it is below grade. Then I'll make a copy of it. So that represents the precast brackets. I could probably create that as a symbol as well, just in case I needed to change it. That'd probably be smart. But I think you get the idea. And now that we've done the main floor plan, I think that's everything in terms of this plan now. Or sorry, the foundation plan. Let's move this over. So now it's underneath the garage plan. And now here we have the columns. So let's copy the column, or copy this X line so that we can show where the columns are located. It'll be the center point of those columns. And I'm going to draw those columns in. You notice that they line up with the quite nicely with the precast brackets. So again, using our detail lines, I'm going to create a rectangle. My rectangle, I'm just going to start it off in space and position it later. It's going to be 3.5 inches wide, and the height of it should be, let's see, 8 plus, let's just make it 9 feet for now. We may end up adjusting it later once we get our landing in position. And I'm just going to position it right directly over top of that precast bracket. So I'm just going to snap it to the midpoint. Create another one there. So we may adjust these later, the rectangles, so they're easy to adjust the height of. Once we get our landing in position, then we can adjust the height of those later. And then now I'm going to go over to the main floor plan. So actually I want to move this. And from our main floor plan we have a few windows, so I'm going to copy this X line. To the midpoint of the windows, or sorry, to the edges of the windows. That's what we did before. What's that? I think it'll still work. I noticed that I did that as well, but I'm pretty sure that it's still, yeah, it's still on the mark. It's a nice thing about X lines is you don't have to worry about heights or anything like that, right? Okay, so let's do the windows first. Those will be the easiest things. So again, the alignment point that we're going to be using here is 7 feet. So we could, if you want to, just simply draw a line up 84 inches or 7 feet. draw it across. That represents the alignment point. We'll delete that line later, or you can copy one of these X lines up, doesn't matter. And now we're going to do a rectangle. And I believe these ones are a little bit different size. These ones are 24 by 48. So we're going to go at 24, comma, negative 48. Make a copy of it. 1, 2, 3. Delete my guidelines. Alright, now let's tackle the stairs. Stairs are the trickiest part, really. So we're going to start with the landing. Now remember, let's go with the door first. We'll do the door before we do the stairs. I forgot about the door. There's my door, and it's going to start from the bottom here, so rectangle. The door is 36 by 80, same size as the one down below. And again, we're going to center it in that space. Now that's the actual slab. It's 36 by 80. The frame's going to be a little bit bigger. So we'll actually have to move it 1.5 inches to the right, maybe 1.5 inches up. And actually, you know what, I'm just going to offset here 1.5 inches all around, just so we can see there's our door frame there. Now that we have our door frame, that door frame sitting on the main floor plan, this would represent the threshold of the door. And this would represent sort of the frame around the door. And our slab would be in the center. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to copy down 6 inches. We need a 6-inch space between the top of the landing and the frame of the door. And that's for snow, right? Remember we talked about that, so we have a little bit of space for snow. So if it snows on the landing, it's not going to come into the building. So I'm going to make a copy of this line, 6 inches down, and that'll represent the top of the landing. Now because I have my landing drawn on my main floor, I'm now going to move these lines so that they represent the edges of my landing. So that would be the edge of the one part of the landing, and well, the other edge is against the other edge is against the wall. So that's going to be my landing here. Now the landing is going to be 1.5 inches for the we're going to be using 1.5 inches decking for the top, and those are going to be on 2x8 joists, which are actually 7 1/4. So the total thickness here is going to be 9 3/4. So I'm going to do a rectangle starting from this corner. I'm going to draw it at, I'm not sure of the width here, I'm just going to do an arbitrary amount, 60, comma, negative 9.75. 9 3/4. So there's the thickness of my landing. Now I'm just going to bring this out to that guideline there. So there's my landing. It's a little hard to see. That's my landing. Now I can actually adjust the columns to the underside of the landing, make it a little bit easier to see. And that landing would include an